For many, policymaking seems distant, complex, or even irrelevant. Whether we're aware of them or not, policies affect our daily lives. In this conversation, we will strip away the layers, taking a topic that often appears incomprehensible, making it straightforward and easy to grasp. Our goal is to show that policy isn't just the domain of politicians or experts. It's for everyone. It involves us all, affects us all, and if we understand it, we can make it work to our advantage. Welcome to the Leading Woman Show Policy Series, brought to you by our sponsors, the National Endowment for Democracy and Luminate. My name is Abosede Jojagan, and today on the show, we're discussing a beginner's guide to understanding policy. With me on today's show, I have Salem King. He's a creator, educator, and influencer championing Africa's creator economy. He has partnered with brands like Spotify and YouTube, inspires a community of over 180,000 young storytellers, and trained over 3,000 aspiring creators. Our second guest today is Jumoke Shotonwa, a multi-influential woman, PR professional, and the visionary force behind Kwasi, a fashion styling company. Certified by the London College of Fashion, her brilliance has left an indelible mark on brands and clients across Nigeria and beyond. We also have here with us Adeniyi Oluwajimi, a seasoned communication and brand strategist with over a decade experience in knowledge management and multimedia. He excels in optimizing information systems and crafting impactful narratives for global organizations. And finally, we have with us Chinonyerem Undububa, a creative director, fitness enthusiast, and a marketing strategist who enjoys creating content through relatable storytelling. She has worked as a model in the beauty industry and is actively championing a brand that focuses on managing social media for organizations through content creation and marketing. I'm sure you cannot wait to dive into this conversation, so let's go. So Salem, Jumoke, Jimmy, and Chinon, welcome to this episode of the show. We're going to be talking about a beginner's guide to understanding policy. And we've promised everyone that when they watch this episode, they will know that policy is not something that's for experts or politicians, but it's for all of us because it affects our daily lives.
Yeah.
So I want to start with a question. Salem, how would you define policy? And why do you think it's important for the everyday Nigerian to understand it?
I think in very simple words, it would be a set of regulations or principles that are agreed on, you know, as the way in which a society will move to rational results.
Interesting.
Right. And why should everyone be bothered? Why not? Is the question we really should ask, you know, because there's people who always talk about how they don't really care about politics, but politics will affect you whether you care or not. So it's the same way that a policy on education will come back around to affecting you or affecting your kids or affecting your friends or your parents. You know, something related to health might not affect you directly, but it could affect your parents.
Absolutely.
So we are all affected by policy as long as we live here, as long as we work here, as long as we continue to attempt to prosper in this landscape.
Right.
So that's something everyone should care about. It goes without saying.
Fantastic. Jumoke, let me come to you. How would you define policy and why should anyone care?
So for me, I would say policy is culture shaping, right? It won't affect our lives, our daily lives, how we live, how we do the things that we do, and it's going to affect every single person. So you must be very involved. in policy, understand it, be aware, you know, educate yourself, know what's affecting you or not affecting you.
Right.
Right. So I think everyone should actually be involved in policy and know what it's about.
Jimmy?
I think policy is about the society, infrastructure, and development. When we think about a society, what are the things that we need to do as a people? How do we need to implement these things? How do we ensure these things are well done for everybody? So when I think about policy, I think about shaping the society, shaping the communities. And why shouldn't anybody care about that? If you live in a society, you should care about what is done in that society.
Chinon, what about you?
I love everything everyone said. And now that they've spoken so well, it's like I've been put on the spot, but like I do agree with everything they said, and I do understand policy to be something that is needed for every society to actually work well. Every society needs structure for things to go properly so that we're not, you know, bouncing into each other or we are struggling to, you know, find some kind of footing for one person, so everyone can in some way benefit. So it's just so that the society has structure and things can flow properly and things can function the way they are supposed to.
I mean, I really like the framing, you know, and what I've heard from all of you. And I guess the next question that somebody watching is asking and wondering is, okay, you say I should care because it affects my daily life. So now, where do I go? Where can I find the policy? How do I know what policy affects me? What should I, do you know what I mean? Like, what, on a regular, should I be watching the news every day? Should I be reading the newspaper every day? Salem.
First of all,
or they should go to TikTok.
So the reality is, 30 years ago, there is a luxury we have now that we simply did not have a long time ago. And that's the luxury of the internet, you know, and being able to just go on your phone and have access to all the information in the world. So I would say that's a good place to start, because we are already spending time on our phones. We're already spending time with things that don't add anything to you. You know, we're clouding our minds. So I think the first step would be to actually check, like, go and ask Google a very simple question, like, what is
Ask
policy? You know, start from there. And ask and start to break it down to sectors, you know, that you're curious about. Could be education, could be health, could be women's rights, could be digital rights, stuff like that. Start to check, okay, what are these? Because people write about these things.
Yes.
Not everyone cares, but there are a select number of people who care a lot. And those people who care a lot, they continue to talk about, so it's almost like 80% of the information on policy is coming from 20% of people.
Right.
You know, and the only people who have the information is that 20%. But the 80% should start searching out that information, and a great place to start. I'm sure the other speakers will speak to like specific places you can check. But the lowest hanging fruits is starting from Google.
Ask Google. Jumoke, what would you add to that?
Okay, I would say first of all, it starts from a desire, right? Because if you're not interested in something, you won't really care about it, right? True. So you need to be interested in where you are, be aware, be present. A lot of times, young people or the general public, they're just living every day, not, you know, knowing or understanding what's forming or shaping where they are, where they live. Be aware and be present, first of all. You know, what's actually shaping how we do the things that we do in my workplace. You know, what's shaping, what are the labor laws or labor, you know, just be present, you know, be aware. And then once you're present, you're seeing things and how things are done, you then begin to dig deeper, then ask Google, right? You know, about this, about that, your sector, maybe your industry where you work or where you play, you know, begin to find out what policies govern, you know, those industries or that sector. And then from there, you're aware, then you begin to, you know, have conversations, you know, join associations. You know, I have a very funny story about this, but I'll keep it for, you know, another time, right? So, but just be present. And once you're present, you're going to begin to spot things. And as you spot things, you can dig deeper. Right. And then start finding out, you know, different things about it. And you can, you know, be aware. Basically.
Yeah. Fantastic. Jimmy?
So let's say you have dealt with what she said and what he said. I feel like when you are interested, like she said, and when you've asked Google, one other place you can go to is ask your reps. Many times I feel like we isolate politicians from what we need to know from them. And I think it was during COVID when I was online and I saw that people were going to their reps to say, oh, what are you guys doing about this? What are you guys doing about that? Not in Nigeria, but of course. Then during NSAS, we had that time where we had all the numbers of everybody, and we're like, call this person, call that person. Many times we might not know exactly what the policies are there, because in Nigeria we don't have that. I don't think, let me not say we don't have, I don't think we have that national repository of all the policies.
Right.
But I feel like when these things concern us, we can ask our reps and say, guys, what have you guys done about this? This is a problem we're facing. How can we sort it out? And I feel like when we involve the politicians, when we hold them accountable, then we can find out.
Fantastic. Chinon, what would you add?
I would say definitely asking questions is very important. Wanting to know what policies are, and it's not just for information's sake, it's for your benefit. Whatever area of life you are in, or whatever it is you do, I believe you should know the policies about those things. You should be very much aware, because in one way or the other, you're going to step into a field, and the last thing you want is to get to a certain point and you realize that you cannot, will I say, break through or hit heights because you're not well informed. So apart from the fact that you should have interest, it's not just for I should have interest for interest's sake. It's because at the end of the day, whatever you are doing, whatever walks of life you are in, you know, it's going to affect you. So why should I know it? Is because it's important for you. So even if you want to be in quote selfish, because a lot of times to convince people to do things, it's like, why should I do things for all this so-called knowing sake? It's because it's going to affect you directly. You know, whatever it is you ask for. He stated, said some things about NSAS and all that. What are the things where what do we need to know to be able to execute things properly, that we know that we are, you know, in the right, or what we are doing that we know, okay, we need to avoid this, and nobody can come and hold us and say we didn't do what's right. We did, you know, as little as, permit me to use this example, you stop me to check or something, and you want to extort from me, not knowing would cause you to be cheated, in quotes. You're cheating yourself, but you know what you're supposed to do. You have the right information. You'd be able to scale through little things that should not even be a problem for you.
Fantastic. And I want to go to how policy, either current or what you desire to see, affects the work that you do. So what policies would you like to see if you were, you know, they're missing their gaps? I've observed that there's a gap here, or there's this policy that the government's talking about that I think if it comes to life, it would really change and transform my work. Can you think of?
So I can't speak to any ones that are coming to light, but I know what I would love to see, especially as someone who, I'm a creator, and I am passionate about the creator economy in Nigeria as a whole. I definitely want a Nigeria where creative professions are accorded with the same amount of respect as everything else, like being a lawyer and engineer. And let me bring this down to like a real example. If I'm driving at 10 p.m. and I get stopped by police officers, and somehow the questions get to what do you do for a living, and I say content creator, immediately they believe that's a cover for something else. So I would like that we're living in a Nigeria where there's a way to keep track of everyone who's working in a creative profession, so that we don't have to explain ourselves. I can say, oh, this is what I do. Look at my work here. You know, just how in the US, there's like a Screen Actors Guild. So if you say that you're an actor, nobody says, you just they use cover something. Because I work hard. I work legally. I know I sweat for every naira that I make, you know. And then somebody just looks at you, profiles you, you look a certain way. They're like, there's no way you're a product designer, you're driving this car. Where did you get that from? So I definitely want more policies that support creative people and people in creative professions in Nigeria, so that we're able to do the work we do freely. And not feel like we need to present as someone else. I know a lot of creatives who have to keep a day job so that, you know, if they have to answer questions, they have an ID card. They have, you know, something to show that, oh, I belong somewhere. Because if you're a creative, you don't belong anywhere. You're just with the wind. I would like for that to not be the case. And I want that to happen in my lifetime and very soon.
Awesome.
Okay, so for me, I know what I would like to say as well. As a stylist, right? And I love what I do. I feel like stylists they feel like the minority because styling is one thing that a lot of people may not understand, except you really need it. But I think it's beginning to come, it's beginning to make some waves right now, right? So for me, I would say a professional, certified, recognized training and development, such that, for example, I have like a professional certification in a foreign international institution, right? Because we don't have such in Nigeria. So I have a passion for this. If there is a recognized certification or training in Nigeria such that I am certified, I'm recognized, I can turn on my certificate anywhere and it's recognized, like it's national. It's, I feel like that will make a huge difference for people like us, who are passionate about this, who are in this industry, like Salem said, right, who are doing this night and day, sweating, working, their expertise, their skill. If there's that training that make them credible, in Nigeria, I think is something that, should come to life.
Fantastic. Jimmy?
Yeah, I feel like culture has found a way to envelope the way that we think about policies. And thinking about what they are saying, someone like me as well, I don't do content creation or creative work all the time. I do that with my 9 to 5. And so many times I don't like to talk about my 9 to 5. So I talk about the creative work I do most of the time. But I find myself tilting towards the 9 to 5 because that's more safety. I have an ID card. I can just show you this is what I do and it's easy to explain. But there has to be some sort of national orientation that sort of changes the mindset, because we have changed in the way that we have, professions. We have changed. The world has changed. You don't just go to school to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer. There are so many things that you can be now.
Absolutely.
And if the people who are implementing these laws do not know, then it puts us at risk. So, but for me, I have worked over a decade with international organizations, and many times my focus has been the labor law policy. I mean, most times we're at the mercy of the integrity of these institutions because we want them to do right by us, but our government isn't doing right by us. The policy is bad. I mean, for instance, when I asked my HR, we don't have, I think we're still trying to get paternity leave for
parental leave.
For paternity leave, actually, for the fathers. For the fathers. And it was 3 days. I think it was just recently put to 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And for a father, you're absent for the first 3 months of your child. There are many countries where these things are already done. And because both parents are very essential to
both parents are parents.
And they're essential to the development of the child. And they put all hands on deck, of course, when the child is born. So at the end of the day, for me, I feel like our labor policy needs a rework. In terms of remunerations, in terms of pension, in terms of the kinds of things that we see. Many times when we fight for stuff, because I work with the staff association in my office, and they say, oh, this is as much as we can do because we can't do anything else. This is what your labor law says. And I say, but I mean, you're an international organization. You can be bound by the law of your country to be able to give us the same level of professional this in here. But I mean, it's always a back and forth conversation. We have this one, there's a push and pull. They're not willing to do more than they are actually doing. And they say this thing, they say, we're not trying to be the best. We're just going to do as much as we can do. And there's nothing I can do about it. And that's where it hurts, because I feel like if my government has done a lot of work to protect me, then maybe I won't be in this position. Because I'm actually doing the same work someone else in Switzerland is doing. And I should have the same remuneration that they are having. And I should have the same standard of life that they're living. And I don't feel like our labor law protects us. I think that needs a rework.
Fantastic. Wow. Chinan, I'd love to hear from you before we go on a break.
Okay, so I'm also a creative. I mean, I studied marketing and a marketing strategist, but I am born a creative. So apart from the fact that I have ventured into this line of work, it is something I've always been, And like Silem said, there's this lack of understanding for nicer ways of putting things that a lot of people, especially those who are in the position to actually affect policies, they do not understand yet. And to me, if I'm going to say, okay, what can we do to shift that or to help, change things among the creative industry and all that, I would say start with schools. The truth is, at the end of the day, whether the government or, lawmakers want to admit it or not, their children are stepping into a digital era where they are very intentional and very interested with creativity. However, the creativity wants to present itself, it is online. So if you do not want to accept that fact, whether you accept it or not, the world will change. But before we get to that point, you need to start putting things in place where, it's not distorted or there's not some kind of, will I say, tweak or error or struggle once we now get there. It's the admitting that, okay, technology is shifting fast. People are beginning to make a source of livelihood out of this. This is actually people's careers. This is people spending time working hard. Like you said, this is my morning and nights. I spend 24 hours. In fact, being a creative, I would say, is 24 hours work. It's not even 9 to 5 because you're constantly thinking of what to do next. You have to be consistent to stay relevant.
That's right.
So it's a very important part of life, and it's a part of life that is coming fast. So if they don't start introducing it to schools, for instance, I would say an example I'd give is going to a school now. I tried to explain to her why she should take her social media very intentional, because whether you like it or not, your business, social media would be the determinant of its success. If you really want to get to that global scale, especially, I mean, we've moved far from the generation of, okay, let me manage local success. You can be successful around the world right now from your bedroom.
Little corner.
Your little corner. So I decided to go to the school and said, I would love to do this for you. I've noticed that you have a lot of potential, but people are not seeing that. Plus, if your students see how much or how intentional you are with this part of, the work, they'll have something they are interested in. Even if it's not like a course, let it be a club, creative club, social media management, digital marketing, the online world, because most secondary schools don't even have that right now. So if the government begins to focus on, we need to make our kids understand how to use these platforms and how to use it well. It's a very good tool, especially for us in Africa, where the opportunities are endless. You're not bound by one currency. It's a good thing if your people have that kind of source of income. So step into the schools and begin to create,
clubs.
Things, classes, clubs, whatever it is you need to create to educate on how to use the media world, so that they're not just wasting their time on it and the rest of the world is moving forward, creating AIs and doing all sorts of things. But, here is, you have to be a lawyer or a doctor. Come on now.
All right. So this is a good place to take a quick break, and we'll continue the conversation when we return. Welcome back. We're still talking about a beginner's guide to understanding policy. So there was a whole conversation that happened during the break. Please, people should have that conversation. I'm listening.
Continuing, like
yes. So what was it?
Had a lot of
had a lot. We need to go into schools.
Okay, so what I was saying, was I agreed to what she was saying about schools, right? It was something I had on my mind. How secondary schools, primary schools, private schools are trying to incorporate, all of these tech-related things, but it's not general. It's not, national. Right? And Salem was saying, or I think Jimmy was saying, it's not important.
I don't think the government has gotten to that place where they recognize this as important as professions. Many of the people who are doing this did it out of, stubbornness. Their parents, rebellion. They had to
broke into
it. It was either you do it's either you do what they want you to do or you leave home. So many people left home, went to stay with friends. Some of them learned to do more things with their friends.
We stayed home and suffered.
Yes, exactly.
You're wasting my time. Staring at your phone 247. What do you think you're doing?
So I think the government, So I think the government has to recognize this as profession, as a profession, as something that is worth doing.
As a valuable use of time.
Yes. Then we can now start talking about education and all of that. When we recognize it, I think it will become easy to put them in the right place.
But then how can we do that? How can we get, because here we're talking, this conversation, we're talking about educating, the viewers. But how do you educate upwards to people who are in government? Because they feel like they know what they're doing. Like, there's a reason why I'm in the House of Reps, because I know what I'm doing. So who are you? This
Tell me.
photographer.
Well, now reach 500k followers. Don't be easy. You know that kind of thing.
how
Just
do
show
we
them.
do that
I think
awkward?
with educating the older people, you have to think like them.
Yeah.
Many times, for instance, this organization budget, they're young. They are into finances. They were checking every project that the government was doing, how much was spent, how much was actually paid. They were auditing the government's infrastructural work around the country, and they did it so much and so long that the government had to look at them as a player in terms of, as a stakeholder. I think that's what
That's
I'll
the
use,
word,
as a
yeah.
stakeholder in terms of financial planning and budget. So now when they want a policy in terms of financial planning and budget, these guys are part of it. We just have to disturb. We just have to keep talking about it online.
trouble.
Online,
We need
yeah.
money, of course,
Yeah.
but we just need to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
Eventually they'll learn. Parents are getting it's not like before. Before now,
Yeah.
parents are doing TikToks with their
Yeah.
Children.
Now.
Yeah.
Now
They're
you
asking
see-
how do
Yeah.
I open an account?
How did you buy me new car? This thing is legal. It's legal. I promise. Yeah.
Exactly. So I feel like we're already in that place where they're getting the exposure little by little, but we just
Yeah.
need to
Keep
So
pushing.
let me throw a spanner in this wheel. Those of us sitting here are considered a minority in Nigeria, and I don't know if we know this, right? Educated,
Yeah.
we speak proper English, literate. Nigeria has a huge rural and illiterate population.
Yes.
How do we bring them in, right? Salem, because we're talking digital,
Yeah.
we're talking internet, we're talking data,
Yeah.
but there's a huge number of people who are not in this world, as much as there's a huge number of people who are in this world, because we got the population,
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. And this is something we've learned the hard way, where people on Twitter, agree on something.
And you realize
And we feel like, as
It's not the
Nigerians, we
same,
have
yeah.
agreed.
Yeah.
But then in the real world,
Yeah.
it's like, it's
Yeah.
something entirely different. So I believe that's a very long journey. But it's one where we need to understand that we need to meet these people where they are.
Absolutely.
In order to be heard, you need to listen.
Yeah.
So we need to say, okay, who is this message for? How do we present it to them in a way that they see themselves inside what we're talking about? So it has to be less like, going to a place and then sharing food so that we get them to do what we want. Not that kind of thing. It has to be, how do I reach to their hearts and their minds? When this person who, is in this rural community wakes up in the morning, what are they worried about? And how can I show them that they can be a part of the solution?
Right.
Because unfortunately, a mindset that we struggle with in Nigeria is people waiting for someone to save them.
Yeah.
Right? That's a general, even with the educated and uneducated, we are constantly, waiting for like the help is going to come externally. So we need to show them that this help you need, this improvement you want, you have power. This person does not have to be your local government chairman. You can vote him out. If they come and share rice in the community, doesn't mean you have to vote. You don't have to sell your vote and stuff like that. So that process of education is going to be arduous. It's going to be expensive. It's going to take a lot of time. But we just need to have people who are committed, to meeting these people where they are, learning their problems, identifying their frustrations, and understanding it even better than them, which will take a lot of research and a lot of, manpower and all that, and over a period of time. I believe it's a long journey, but I don't think it's impossible.
It's impossible.
I think we can start from meeting them where they are.
Shina?
Okay.
If I can quickly jump on something you said, although I can't really remember exactly the person that did this, but something with what you said of, the rural areas, and that is most of our population.
Yes.
Things like Tunde, I believe, the chess player, for instance, things like that, what he does actually impacts them.
Absolutely.
Someone like that will have influence among these people. He's going to places where they obviously don't have, access to be doing creativity online or whatever, and he's giving them something. If he decides to talk to them and educate them, it's going to be easier because he has opened up an avenue. Or this other guy that goes to deep rural areas where it's swamped up and everything, and he's like, oh, thank you. someone like that to go to a community and is like, okay, so I want to do something with everyone. You guys, I want to tell you about, they would listen because he has brought his platform to them. And it will shock you how much they can touch from just that one platform. So even if it's one person can have influence over an entire community.
Yeah.
So I feel like creatives, especially those of us here, if we start looking for how do I do my own thing, that I'm able to influence my community to start knowing that, okay, you can have a voice, even if you don't have your own phone or whatever, but through me.
Exactly.
And I'm going to give you information on what you need to know to, like you said, you don't need to sell your vote. If Tunde tells one of his young boys now doing their thing, this is what you do, he's more inclined to want to listen to him. So those of us in that space.
I think I want to jump on that, right? There are different organizations, NGOs that do these things, like Stex mentioned. If you can partner with them as well, right? They need money. They need resources. They need the support, right? So if you're able to partner with these organizations, I know I went to do a project last year, Paddy Girl, went to this rural community in Lagos, and how these girls, secondary school girls, they don't have access to sanitary pads. They're not educated enough to know.
Which could be a policy, by the way, free sanitary pads.
Exactly.
For all girls. Exactly.
Yeah.
It could be a policy.
Right. So we went there, we partnered with the NGO. We gave them the reusable pad. I don't know if you heard about it, where you can reuse the pads, so that because they don't have money to even keep buying, right? They can use these pads over and over again. These girls use plantain leaves. They don't even go to school when they're on their period because they're going to be laughed at.
Oh my God.
So partnering with organizations that do things like this will go a long way in educating these people. Like, Chinon has said, they have their ears. And they can listen to them, right? Partner with them, give them more money, go for, trainings, skill development, take these things to them, right? And like Salem also mentioned, let them see themselves in it. You have a better future, right? You can be better than this, you can be more than this, right? And this policy is being developed to really go a long way. Yes, your partnership is a big deal.
So and not to rain on our parade, but we're talking about 80 million people, right? I feel like we can touch the world in different way we want to touch them. These people touch different communities. But I feel like I don't think we have enough people who are working to ensure that the rural communities are doing what they need to do. For instance, there's the Nigerian Red Cross. They have a branch in every state. They have volunteers in every community. That is a very good organization to partner with. In terms of partnership, you need funding. We need some sort of like institutional movement that is geared towards mindset formation. But like, again, this has to, we have to know that it's going to take time. And when I'm talking about time, I'm talking about 10 years, because 10, 20 years, because when you want to reorient somebody, you have to spend a lot of time with them. And so my fear is, I love this conversation we're having. I work in international relations, and like I said, I've had a lot of time with most of these people. And 1 minute, you are fine with them, you have them thinking the way you want them to think. The next minute they're hungry, or the next minute they've been chased. So we have a lot of issues, right, that are factors that work against the work that we would naturally do. For instance, there are places we can't go to because the security issue in that area is not something, you can't tell those people don't vote for somebody. If the only person who can reach them is someone who has the army or the police in their convoy, then you can't actually reach those people. And we're talking about millions of people who can no longer farm. I feel like as much as we want to touch the world and do things from our individual places, if we have some sort of institutional approach, I think it helps it makes more sense. I feel like, for instance, all these countries that were third world countries in the 90s and in 2000s, they became big economies. They started by this general orientation, and either from the government, either from private institutions, either from NGOs. But we need to find these people who we can partner with, where we can be part of this vision already, so that like our impact is bigger.
Fantastic.
You make such a good point about everything you said, and I want to add to that and say policies normally it's never one big thing. It's a million little things.
That's right.
It's a spectrum. So as we're trying to improve a policy related to education, economic policy has to be considered because the people that you're educating need to eat. They need to have a standard of living. They need to know that school is not going to be a waste of time. That when I come out from school, there'll be jobs.
Gainfully employed.
Exactly. So there's employment policy again. There's labor. You know, there's all these things work hand in hand.
We also need the accountability policy. Let's hold the government accountable as well. Like, you know, how do we draw them to do all these things?
And can I just add on that? Because to be honest, when you were talking about, you know, numbers online, I mean, I hope you know that the politicians are like 1 million followers. They are not the ones that are going to elect. That's really the thing. So that's why what's happening on Twitter is completely different from what's happening in constituency. Because the people who vote are not those numbers you are seeing. It's real people. So to your point, the politicians are saying, okay, great, fantastic, 1 million views, good to go. But how does it translate? And so it leads me to my next question around, why should the public participate? What is the incentive that people have to participate, right? Why? Why should they? Because we're saying they should care. I think that's how we kind of started this conversation. But what is the incentive, right? Is it my votes? Is it the accountability piece because you will do what you promised that you would do? Or are we just not there yet in terms of the people who will collect 5K? Because, you know, I've sat and I've thought about that thing. It's like mortgaging your life for 4 years for 10,000 naira. But to your point, today we must chop. And if 2K is going to help me, let's wait first for that 4 years that you're talking about. Do you know what I mean? So these are the real issues. You know. So how do we crack this code? Because another election is coming again soon.
Yeah,
2 years.
I think we have a long-term thinking problem in Nigeria.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that education has to fix from the lowest, deepest grassroots. The average Nigerian isn't thinking of the next 5 years. The government as a whole it's not thinking about
I think about the next 4
food
years.
safety for the next 10 years. Like
children,
food can actually finish in Nigeria. You know, there was one time when there was shortage of it's crazy to think about it. There was one period where chicken was in shortage. You know, and
eggs,
different eggs. You know, that stuff like that isn't supposed to happen because you're supposed to know that, okay, we have this population at this growth rate. This is how much we need to prepare for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years. That's something that the average Nigerian doesn't have. And it reflects in a lot of things, even in businesses. The statistics show that a lot of businesses die. A lot of businesses don't even get to the next generation. You know, so there's a fundamental continuity problem. First of all, and that's something that for us to begin to be able to solve, we need to acknowledge that it exists. First of all, and then all of us need to collectively and individually educate ourselves on how to, you know, where to start, how to get ourselves out of that.
I think a lot rests on education. We've been talking about it for a while now, and if we don't educate ourselves, I don't think we would ever know. It's one thing to tell people something, but education is not just advocacy and just saying something. It's to sit with them and to teach them why this thing is important. I feel like that's missing even in our educational sector. In primary school, we don't learn about Nigeria in the way we're supposed to learn about. We don't learn patriotism. We don't learn and we've already lost the population when you don't learn patriotism because they are always going to think about themselves and they're never going to come out and say, nobody's going to die for Nigeria anymore because we don't have people who are patriotic. We had the population or the generation that fought for independence, and after that, that's it.
Democracy. The ones that fought for democracy.
Yes, the ones that fought for democracy. Yes, and then after that, that's it. And since then, none of us we're not heroes. I will not say I'm a hero. I don't want to die for Nigeria. so when we think about it, and I feel like this is a grassroots problem. If we have people thinking like that, then we can have it. For instance, the last time we had an agenda was a year ago, I think, 7-point agenda that was supposed to last for, I think, 5-10 years. It was Obasanjo that had Vision 2020.
No, now we have Vision 2050.
We do? Okay. Maybe I did it.
FYI.
So, I mean, in terms of these plans that we had? What have we done with them? Who is checking how far we've gone? What are the benchmarks to, you know, as a country, I think we've lost patriotism and we've lost the right to fight for Nigeria, not just even dying for Nigeria, but to fight for the betterment of the country. And I think that the education has to start immediately, not just even in schools, but outside of schools, with the news that we share, with the things that we're saying on air. I feel like there has to be a lot of education.
Shinan and Jumoke, I just want to let you chip into that before we go on our next break.
With what you're saying, education, I have been singing this to the choir. That's something that I really want to delve into. It is illiteracy and lack of knowing that is killing our nation. And the truth is, I've said this before, I've spoken about this before on my platform, and I know those kind of things are not necessarily what gets the audience. But I said, let's think about it. The corruption is not even our problem. Corruption is happening because from very young, these young ones have been programmed to believe as far as I make it and I can pay my way out of, cheat my way out of little things, it doesn't matter. The entire nation itself doesn't matter. You know, that kind of thing. And there's a particular program I follow. It's not like TV or whatever. Someone I know that has a platform, Performance Enhancement Classes, PEC, that's what he calls it. And I support and love it so much because he doesn't just focus on mathematics and English. Yes, it is proper dedication to every student. Let them know, you know, opening your mind to understand what it means to be disciplined, delayed gratification. You know, there are skills. The truth is, education shouldn't just be how to solve math or English. There are skills you need to pick up. It should come to you quickly the way you wake up and brush your teeth.
So values, more values.
You know, values,
well.
that you instill in people. You know, so he does these programs that the children are being taught regularly until it becomes a norm to them. You know, there are some parts of the world, whenever I think about Singapore, for instance, I'm baffled when I read about the history. And part of me thinks about it like, do you know, the truth is that Nigerians, youths, let's be honest with ourselves, we're misbehaving, we're wasting what we have. You have the internet. I said, okay, let me check up this Singapore, amazing place, you know, they're talking about. And when I saw the history, Singapore is like, what, around our age?
First world to
look at
third
you,
world to first world in 30 years.
Can you imagine, what did they do? So if people start, you know, at least if our generation starts thinking that way
right now,
what did these people do? How can we start implementing it little by little that we can make a switch? It will help us instead of this. Please, I need to eat today. Even people that are running away from me, I need to find work today. It's a mentality. It's I'm not thinking about 10 years. I'm not thinking about 15 years. I'm thinking about today. No, I need to fill my stomach.
Fantastic. Jumoke?
So this conversation is very immediate to my heart, right? I'm like, oh my God, you know, I saw a meme on Lighter Notes yesterday, and, you know, it says, we now have the big TVs, put your discount on the groceries, right? You know, then Black Friday used to be on TVs, you know, and all of those things, refrigerators. But now we all have all the gadgets and all the electronics. No. I need discount on your groceries,
as
right?
in food that I will eat tomorrow.
You know, because at the end of the day, it will affect every single person.
Yes.
Last, like we say, it will touch everybody. So you must be involved.
Yeah.
You must pay attention, right? I think it's really, really critical. For me, I would say it's like culture shaping, like I said. It's the values that we hold in this country. You know, it's not tangible, but it's there. You know, like he said, we're not patriotic. I remember I used to say when I was young, I'm still young, by the way. Younger. You know, that I love Nigeria so much, you know, and I never want to live outside of Nigeria. Yes, I can travel and stuff, but I really love Nigeria. I mean, that's just me. But a lot of people don't have that same mindset. Yes. It's a value thing, right? And we need to continue to have this conversation. Where are the places that have the ears of these people? The religious organizations, the schools, you know, what other places can we talk about this? We need to keep talking about it. Everyone needs to, like, sing it, use your social media, you know, any platform you have, anytime you meet somebody, you know, be passionate about this country, about, you know, the future of this country, about your future, about your generation, everything that concerns you. We just need to keep talking about this over and over and over again.
Fantastic.
I'd like to say, at least if you don't talk, if someone is passionate, shut up. If you have a problem with it, because people discourage other people. Now, wow, this your wasabi is too much, or your patriotism for this. Don't talk again. That's the best you can do. Just let us be passionate about it.
All right, so it's time for us to take another break. When we return, we'll take some audience questions. Welcome back. We would like to take questions from the audience. Who has a question?
Good day. My name is Ngozi. I've been really enjoying this conversation. So I've been wondering, some of us don't understand policy as creators. So can you please help us simplify? Please.
So I mean, I feel like we gave, but Salem, if this was one of your videos, simplify policy, please, for content creators.
So I think I should explain it like this. So the difference between a law and a policy is a law is something that you can break, and then you're affected by breaking that. You
can go to prison.
Yes. But a policy is something that whether you agree or you don't agree with it, it affects you. Do you get? So that's the difference. So a law, you break it, you face the consequences. A policy applies itself to you. Yeah. Do you get? So by reason of just being in Nigeria, you are affected by the policy. Recently, I went on vacation and I had already paid for my flight, my hotels, everything. And then I got in, and at the resort, they said you had to pay a tourist levy. Nobody told me about it. But because I was in their country, policy, I had to pay or go back. So that's what policy is like, except you're in Nigeria. So there's policy around different subjects, around digital, the digital landscape in Nigeria, around education, like we've been talking about, around women's rights, around children, marriage. There's different subjects around which there is policy, and it is decided by the government. But people and a lot of bodies can have a hand in influencing these policies, by talking about it, like what we're doing now, interfacing with government officials, to let them know this is what's actually happening. I know that in your office, you don't really know how much is milk. You don't know how much is Coca-Cola, but this is how it's pinching us. And then from those conversations and the interfacing, they're able to see that, oh, this is what's happening. For example, now the minister of, I forget what the exact term is, something around tech though.
Yeah.
That didn't exist before. But because he's there now, he's like an interface between the presidency and the booming tech economy in Nigeria. So the government is paying attention to those people more because he's there. So it's now our own responsibility as creative people, as people working in creative professions, to think, how does government policy apply itself to what I do? And how can I use my voice to, move closer to a solution in that direction?
Fantastic. Let's take another question.
All right. My name is Ezeji Kizito, and I've really been enjoying this program. I really wish it wouldn't end. So if you were the president, what kind of policies would you implement?
Okay, now.
Love it.
Every time we'll be commenting. Twitter president. So yeah.
Why is everyone looking at me?
Yes, I agree. Oh yeah. Female president. Oh yeah.
Okay, women president.
Go ahead first.
I think we already said it, right? If I was the president, one of the policies that I would implement would be the tech policy for schools, for tertiary and secondary schools, right? Such that the curriculum, is not just very stereotypical. We're doing law, medicine and things like this. Now the world is tilting, is moving, towards creativity, towards technology, AI, skills, people have passion, skills, talents. How can we begin to teach, these people from a young age, in secondary schools? I'll begin to, I would implement that kind of policy for secondary school,
If I can.
If I can. I'm sorry, but if I can, performance enhancement classes will be mandatory. I love watching sometimes, how some schools, have you seen some Asian schools how they have their kids doing things beyond just
the classroom.
You must have skills, you must be disciplined, you must be, by so age, they are making small robots, for God's sake. And that comes from consistency, discipline. So you see that performance enhancement, you must learn to improve. Self-awareness, educating yourself on, okay, like you said already, you know your talents, you know what you are good at, so that you are relevant in your sector. You're not just producing people that are struggling with school. You're actually being relevant in your society. So I love the idea of making sure that schools are beyond just the basic teachings. There has to be things put in place where the mind of every single child, because to be frank, if we're targeting the young ones now, they are fresh. They're the ones that you catch. You catch them young. Every single child must have a certain mindset that targets towards how am I productive? And how can my productivity actually encourage or influence people around me? How can it benefit my society? So it's not just, what kind of job will I get to make more money? You know? And that kind of thing definitely will come from basic things like, the first thing I'll solve is light. Let there be steady electricity. It's as simple as that, to be very frank. If there's constant electricity, why are we thinking of where to get petrol? You know, little things like that. So once that's cleared, they're able to focus on how they can promote the society, not how they can buy petrol for their company.
All right.
If
President Jimmy, over to you.
If I can jump on that. I think mine will be a national orientation policy. Like a policy
which does exist, but go ahead.
That is implemented in a way that educates the national populace. I remember we had this thing called Good People, Great Nation that was done during Jonathan's time. But I see what the effort was. I don't feel like the implementation was thorough in the way that it should have been. For instance, during election, we have the issues where people are divided either by religion, by tribe, by one social issue or the other. The national orientation should ensure that people are more nationalistic, more patriotic. We're all Nigerians. It doesn't matter if I'm Hausa, Igbo. So my policy would be that there's an education that Nigeria comes first before your tribe. And that way, we have a more nationalistic view. And it doesn't matter if I'm in Borno or if I'm in Delta State. I'm just working for the country and I'm doing what needs to be done.
Oh my goodness. It's clap for all our presidents. I love it. One more? We've got one more. Let's hear it.
Good day. My name is Samuel Okore. I want to know, how do we take this information to the rural community? Thank you.
I know that somebody said that's for us. All of them will help us. What do you think, Salem?
As for the host.
I know, but then I now, this is what they call delegation. So I said, Salem, as a content creator, you know, how do we take this message, you know, everywhere, especially to the grassroots, where we have already acknowledged that there is a gap between where we are now, where they could potentially see this every day, and this kind of information where they would access it.
Yeah. So one of the things we had been mentioning is that we need funding, you know, and all of that. But one thing we also need very much of is manpower. You know, people who will actually go and do this. So I want to encourage every young person who's here, who's watching this, to volunteer. Like, give 1 year, you know, of, if let's say you just finished NYSC or you just finished secondary school, or you have 3 months of summer, you don't know what to do, volunteer. Nigeria has problems. Nigeria has a long list of problems. So volunteer, give your time, give your energy, you know, and your skills, your ability to communicate. So for example, you know, we talked about how there's rural communities where they don't speak English. But you know, you may have gone to school so you know English, but you also can speak Hausa. Go and volunteer, you know, in places where they are going to those areas. You know English and you're educated, but you also speak Ibibio. Go and volunteer and go to those places. You get, just like what she mentioned about Tunde, for example. He's not from those places that he goes to, you know. So please, I just want to encourage everyone. And the beautiful thing about volunteering is you learn so much about yourself in the process, right? I don't want to talk about just the incentive, but maybe I have to. you learn so much about yourself in the process of volunteering. You learn about life, about people, about what makes the world turn, how people think, behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, what gets people to part with money, what makes people make bad decisions even though they know better. There's so much you learn. So in the future, if you now want to run for office, you will be speaking from a place of experience because you've talked to these people, you've eaten with these people, you've interacted with them. So you're not just talking, like all of us that are just saying Nigeria is bad, Nigeria has problems. You were part of the solution.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody will be able to say, what have you done for Nigeria? You say, this is what I have done. What have you done?
Absolutely.
And you'll be able to call them out and inspire them.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I want to encourage everyone. There are a lot of organizations out there. They need people.
Yeah.
There are plenty of organizations. Yeah. Just, go on Google, ask in your community, in your church, anywhere, even from the Leading Woman show, go to the website, go and seek out how to contribute what you have.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, those were great questions, and I'm really glad that we got to answer them. Before we come back to our guests to hear final thoughts, let's hear what people on the streets have to say.
Yes, they do impact my daily life.
We live in Nigeria, so every policy impacts us.
Free education for young adults.
I think free healthcare, free education at grassroots as well. The increase in the salary of teachers.
I haven't made any deliberate findings.
Well, one or two of it was easy, but the others are not so. If you're not learned, it might not really impact on you.
I don't think so.
I do not think they really listen to the needs of the people.
The biggest challenge, like I said earlier, is execution.
The local government of each community need to sensitize their people and make them aware of what's going on at the top. Being a listening here, they should listen properly and communicate what they expect us to understand or what they want to achieve with us. Freedom of speech, right? I think in Nigeria, we are talking about democracy, yet we are not so free to express our human rights.
Wow, this has been such an engaging conversation. But before we go, let's hear final thoughts from our guest. Chinon.
With everything that we've been discussing, I genuinely am happy to be in the midst of people who still have this country seriously into consideration. It's not just a matter of how can I live good. I mean, good life is wonderful, but what I would remind all of us today about is remember to always plan ahead. I think we keep forgetting that. It's always now, I have to be gratified now. That's not how life works, especially since we know the situation we are in. The first step is to admit that, yes, we are in a dire situation where we need help. We know this. Right. Second step should be, what can we do to solve it? Not how can I get away from it? We're always running away from the problem and looking for, loopholes. Instead, let's face this head on. What can I do in my own small space, at the very least? How can I be of influence? How can I change my mindset? If it's a mindset thing, if it's as little as that, how can I change my mindset? Permit me to say this. Sometimes I think, let's say someone like Nelson Mandela right now, what was going on in his mind to be that dedicated to fight for what he believed in, so much so that he made such a huge impact? I'm not saying everybody would turn out to be Nelson Mandela, but something happened. There was maybe somebody that decided, I would teach this child this way and this child will turn out this way. If that person neglected their role, in actually pouring into him, I don't think they would have had a Nelson Mandela. So there should be intentionality.
So my take home and my call to action for you is don't lose hope. You might
Just
be in
got
the
it out of
pool
my
right
mouth.
now, but please don't lose hope. We can't afford to lose hope for Nigeria because this is our hope. This is all we have. This is all we're ever going to have. This is where our kids are going to grow up. Even though you're in the pool, this is where your kids should grow up. And if we lose hope, then we've lost our country. I think the first thing is don't lose hope. And there's something you can do. You might have felt like, oh, my vote does not count, so then I don't care about it. But your vote does count. Because if it doesn't, no one will try to, play around with it. So at the end of the day, there's something you can do. You can volunteer, like we've said. You can start advocacies, like you said. You can research. Sometimes research is all you need to get you started. Find out what's happening, who is doing what, where are they doing it, how can I be part of it, be part of something, be part of a change. But whatever it is you're doing, make sure that you don't do nothing. Because I'm going to paraphrase this saying, evil tribes when good men do nothing. So if we really want the country to move forward, we all have to have all hands on deck and do the right thing.
Fantastic. Jumoke?
He just said my words, but I will still say it. Don't lose hope in Nigeria. Nigeria will work.
Yes.
And you're a big part of that. I was having a conversation with somebody just a few days ago, and she was talking to me about how a whole generation has left the country. If every one of us keep running away, keep moving out of the problem, what will be left of Nigeria? You are a big part of this nation, and Nigeria is counting on you.
Yes.
Your generation is counting on you. Your family is counting on you. The world is counting on you. Don't lose hope.
Sina.
I would love to encourage everyone to take personal responsibility for the development of our country. There's a lot of... We have good reason to believe that it is the responsibility of somebody else, right? Because that's what a government is for. We voted them to serve us, but there's ways in which sometimes they don't serve us and you feel like, they didn't do what they're supposed to do, so what am I supposed to do? But you have a responsibility, whether it's as little as using your voice or as tweeting, as volunteering in a small community somewhere in Jigawa, or showing up, to this, or watching a video like this and sharing it. All these little things are the ways in which you are taking responsibility and moving the needle forward. But in your mind, when you wake up every morning, think about the fact that Nigeria is in trouble and I have a responsibility to make it better.
Fantastic. So at the beginning of this episode, we promised that we will convince you that policy is something that you should care about and that every one of us should care about. And I have to say that our guests have delivered. So thank you very much. Salem King, Jumoke Shotonga, Adeni Oluwajimi, and Chinoyem Ndububa. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. And of course, to our live audience, thank you for being such a valuable part of today's conversation. Now, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media to share your thoughts on the episode using the hashtag on your screen. I'm your host, Abosede Jojogan. Remember that women's leadership can change everything, everywhere. See you next week.